You want me to go ahead, Warren?
You know, as far as I can tell.
Go, don't go.
Hold on.
Okay. I can see the picture of the lectern on this monitor.
I know.
Somebody just said they can't hear me. They can see my mouth moving, I guess, but they can't hear me. So we're not getting sound either. Someone says I need to talk louder. How's that?
Go for it. I think we're ready.
Yes, we have sound. Just speak up and we can see you. So I think we are ready to go.
Turn toward the microphone.
Okay. Want me to go, Warren?
Proceed.
Good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Franklin and to the mountains of Western North Carolina. Our welcome words today are adapted from Erica A. Hewitt. Welcome to this morning, this day, and this opportunity to be together in community, which is a time of joy, comfort, and sometimes challenges. This Unitarian Universalist congregation is a place where we come to learn more about being human. We're not here because we've figured out life's questions or because we think we've got it right. Let us move into worship, willing to be authentic with each other, honest within ourselves, and open to connection in all its forms. We welcome you. This service particularly represents our fourth Unitarian principle, a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. My name is Penny Brewster, and I'm pleased to be your service leader today. The Zoom chat box is available for announcements. For those who prefer to focus on the service, you can close that out now and catch up later. Are there any church-related announcements? Any community-related announcements? Be sure to watch the UUFF to find any additional information. Our volunteers this morning are Warren Riley on media. Our Zoom host and music coordinator is Jude Lowery. Jill Ellern is assisting with recording, and Becky Thorndike is monitoring for us downstairs. We continue in transition with our technology, and thank you for your patience. Join us for conversation time on Zoom following the service. If you haven't already done so, this is a good time to mute your Zoom microphone if it has not already been muted. Our fellowship is a light for liberal religion in the mountains that values diversity and the richness that it brings to our community. Our celebration of diversity is reflected in the variety of our Sunday services. We hope today's service enriches your journey. Our opening words today are from William James, who will be featured in Dale's message. As we take a general view of the wonderful stream of our consciousness, What strikes us first is this different pace of its parts. Like a bird's life, it seems to be made of an alternation of flights and perches. We hope that today's message will encourage some of each of these. Our chalice lighting words are from the Passover Haggadah. Well, not working.
Push the button,
What button?
the black button, right under the silver.
Let me see. I've done, oh, there you go. You got it. I don't know how you did it, but you got it. Thank you. It takes a village. Our chalice lighting words are from the Passover Haggadah. May the light we now kindle inspire us to use our powers to heal and not to harm, to help and not to hinder, to bless and not to curse, to serve you, Spirit of Freedom. Our opening hymn is number 123, Spirit of Life. Without the oil that nourishes its flame, And just as this flame cannot burn without oil, this spiritual community cannot survive or thrive without the financial as well as personal support of its members and friends, the oil that keeps the flame of our liberal spiritual faith alive and fuels the shared mission and ministry of this fellowship. Let us now give freely and generously an offering to sustain and strengthen our shared spiritual community, a community of memory, hope, faith, and love. For we are now the keepers of its flame that burns for justice, its dream of beloved community, its vision of a world made whole. May our offering help us practice Unitarian Universalism within and beyond our fellowship. All donations are deeply appreciated. Our offertory hymn is number 347, Gather the Spirit. Gifts given in love and hope continue a cycle of love and hope. So may it be. Dale Barrington, our speaker today, is no stranger to our congregation and pulpit. His varied spiritual background and extensive knowledge of Unitarian Universalist history uniquely qualify him to speak on today's topic. Dale will continue the discussion that was begun in January of this year regarding how humanism influenced the development of Unitarianism this time focusing on the first 3 decades of the 20th century. There will be an opportunity for some questions during conversation time. Welcome back, Dale.
Good morning. The last time that I brought a talk on this subject, we began with the 19th century and especially the influence of the transcendentalism to humanism as it began to develop in that period of time. Today I'm talking about the pragmatism, and particularly of humanism, that is projected by William James and John Dewey, and how the Unitarians has been influenced by that. The pragmatism of William James and John Dewey suggests that the world is still incomplete, and that the human being is a change agent for the character and direction in the developments yet to come. These two significant thinkers set the seeds for humanistic thought in the first 3 decades of the 20th century. Maybe a little bit longer than that, maybe almost to the 4th decade. Their thoughts took root among others of kindred spirit. John Dietrich and Curtis Reese, significant people to the growing aspects of the Unitarians. They were 2 clergy types who became fast friends from a conference meeting they shared together. It was a session of the Western Unitarian Conference in Des Moines, Iowa, and from this meeting in 1917 to the election of Frederick May Elliott as president of the American Unitarian Association in 1937, humanism had a run of about 15, maybe 20 years of steady but very slow growth, which climaxed with the publication of the Humanist Manifesto in 1933. I will say to my Unitarian friends that that's a book you ought to read. It's a significant book, and has helped actually change Unitarianism itself. With their best publication vendor silenced, that is the New Humanist ceasing publication, and a war with Germany becoming a very real possibility, humanism took a hit in popularity, and a small but feisty group of radical liberals became even smaller. Dietrich came to humanism by way of the Reformed Church, a small denomination of evangelical Christians. He was an ordained minister and studied his way into doubting the things he was teaching others to believe. And I will say right there, I would say amen to that in my life as well. And I would venture to say as much as 20% of many pastors in many evangelical denominations believe the same thing, had the same thing happen to them. They studied their way into doubting the things he was teaching others to believe in. He began speaking his convictions and was soon charged with heresy in 1911. I remember that word myself. The Bible was not inerrant, he said. Jesus had no special birth, nor was he divine, and he could not save anyone. That's enough to get him shot. But whether lost or saved, he asked the question, who is lost? Who is saved? He left them to become a Unitarian. Imagine that. What he believed was an ongoing growth of creation, a journey toward the maturation of all living things. Everything continues to progress infinitely, he felt, and he was not willing to identify that process as God. However, to examine humankind anthropologically and biologically, one would discover there was something deeper than matter alone that urged humankind toward a fuller and freer life. And that was the problem among humanists themselves in the early part of the 20th century. What does it mean to be human? And there seems to be something that's deep and more than just the pure matter of life. So, that alone was an urge humankind toward a fuller and freer life. He saw no need to use theistic language to express this urge within humanity because it seemed to be nature's gift to creation. Notwithstanding any serious challenge, he accepted it as nature's affectionate bequest that drives us to be. This explanation was good enough to put him into a select few who were willing to put their names on the lectern circuit of brave and daring souls throughout the Midwest. From several pastorates in Illinois and Iowa, Curtis Reese, his friend, eventually settled into a social service center where he engaged both people and ideas as a practical humanistic approach to citizenship and community. Here he produced many books that were used to play forward his ideas to the first generation of humanists, be they religious, secular, nature in essence. Perhaps the most significant person to codify humanistic thinking was Roy Wood Sellers, who taught philosophy at the University of Michigan. He was the primary writer of the Humanist Manifesto, published in May of 1933. And I will say this, that probably about 4 years ago, I was asked to shape up the book library here, and I did. And this book was part of your library, and it's one worthy to read. But his ideas was edited by many others in its creation. It was this contribution which laid the foundation for understanding humanism as a civil and religious orientation to a responsible community, and I would add, to making the world a better place to live in. It was his epistemology that made his ideas so accessible and intellectually palatable to the reader. He called it natural realism, which may be described as a common sense view of perception. It was evolutionary, a naturalism, where he describes it facetiously this way: matter is all that matters. It never ceases to exist. Nature is a spatio-temporal reality that is inclusive to all of matter that exists in the cosmos. It is a confluence of creation that acts as a dynamic interaction of new creations happening continuously. His ontology was that nature is all that there is. The problem as he sees it is in how people think of time and space. Normally, people make them entities of which we are a part, when that's not true. They are simply descriptions we give to them, time and space. The physical world as we see it is not so much in space as it is spatial temporal. It is existing now in this moment, but only in this moment because everything is constantly changing. It reminds me of the earliest historian, Heraclitus. And he made this statement, you cannot step in the same river twice, meaning everything at all times is changing. Even the river is a different river than you stepped into. So, time is nothing more than a sequence of events where change will interfere as in evolution. That's how fast it changes. Very slowly, but it changes. Time has meaning because of matter. In other words, time is a characteristic of matter and doesn't exist independently of it. So, when speaking to my Aunt Mabel's pastor as a humanist, I can say that the only heaven and hell I know about is in this very moment we are experiencing right now. They, heaven and hell, are myths we describe as metaphors. Natural order is simply intrinsic to nature itself, from the farthest galaxy in space to our universe and our Milky Way. There are multi-levels of complex organizations throughout this space-time journey we are on forever. We are simply stardust at this moment in our journey, at this moment in our journey are differentiated from zebras and bacteria because creativity and evolution gave birth to a new species of the human family. From the primary amoeba cells to neurological complexity, we are in a process of following higher degrees of organization until a burp happens and a butt falls on the ground and cries out like a little Homo sapien. It isn't providential grace that directs a birth as this. It is the symphony of creativity. It is from this fact that novelty arises, a progression from energy light to matter to nature to a living species to the human mind to society. Out of this organic matrix, conscious purpose evolves. Religion for Sellers is a self-conscious human life that naturally has its own baggage of problems to work on, but the success of the evolutionary development is seen in the way they value each other as the sacred gifts of creation they are. That's very humanistic, folks. From the first generation humanists to the second generation, Charles Potter became a marker, along with the Christian Register, major printing voice of the Unitarians. It gave him and many others the forum to debate back and forth the value humanism was having upon the world. Now, I will say that the Christian Register was founded in 1821 and changed its name in 1958. Changed its name to Unitarian Register. But it was this thing for Charles Potter and millions of others, it seems like millions, of others that spoke on in the form of humanism out of a very, very rich paper. When the second generation kicked in with Eustace Hayden in the late 20s and early 30s, humanism peaked. And you can imagine why. And then quickly went into decline after 1933, 34, 35. But their effort created some fresh air for a new crop of followers to come on board. Well, you had the First World War, you had the financial breakdown in 1929, you had another war coming on. No wonder humanism was kicked in the stomach. Hayden, like so many others, came from another denomination with a hunger for more air to breathe. Now, Hayden went to Southern Seminary in Kentucky. He was a Southern Baptist. And that was the first seminary I went to. And I went to it for the same reason he went to it. It was liberal. But I stayed and he didn't. It wasn't liberal enough for him, evidently. But he found what he was looking for, that new fresh air to breathe. He found that in Chicago. He understood religion as a many-layered onion-like phenomenon. Below the myths was a common goal of all religions, which projected a satisfying life, he felt. His was virtually a religion without theology. The value of such a view is understood when replacing the ritual of religion with a new philosophy and language, and this is what he entered into. That is, intuition and mystery and feelings entered a humanistic lexicon as ways to experience truth and knowing. A new dynamic of hearing and knowing came together, and he was one of the archetype persons to project that. They were the emotive gifts of knowledge. And we don't use that with our senses so much. Intuition, mystery, and feelings. But he did. So humanism is changing a little bit, and a little bit, and a little bit. It was kind of a poetic naturalism that supplemented the linear approach of the older humanists who didn't have anything to do with religion. Liberal religious language was entering into naturalistic and humanistic expressions. Knowledge for them was broadening out. It reminds one of how transcendentalism entered into Unitarian thought. Now, this church would not think that the Unitarians of this period of time, or even before that, was the church that you just walked into, because they were so conservative. So a lot of things was changing. Transcendentalism changed them a whole lot. In fact, transcendentalism, entering into Unitarianism, it was considered as a pariah of sorts. Wild, radical subversives who were treated as a disease-like malady in society, and particularly the Unitarian Church. And here was where humanism itself took different takes on being described as a religion. Some liked it, some didn't like it at all. One example being in 1941, when the American Humanist Association was formed as a secular humanist who withdrew from using religious language in describing themselves. They didn't want anything to do with Unitarians. They called themselves some kind of religion or give religious offerings. Those who considered themselves religious humanists or religious naturalists having a religious language was necessary to express how they felt about creation as a whole and human being in particular. For them, the human being was a social being, was a spiritual being, was a sexual being. So that invites liberal language, just that knowledge into their life. And that's what they wanted. They did not value wealth. That's one thing they believed in, preferring a shared life in a shared world. They did not value capitalism. Instead, they called for a socialized economic order. They did not value traditional religion or its goals. They called for a cooperative effort to promote a social well-being of each other. Number 4, they did not value competition. They cherished instead the cooperative use of intelligence and material wealth. They did not value militarism, affirming life rather than denying it. They did not value conformity, encouraging individuals in their own idiosyncratic quest for truth and satisfaction is their preference. So, this is Unitarianism described in humanistic terms as being religious a little bit. It was the traditional Christian communities, and in particular the evangelicals, that shaped the American religious culture for the most part. We are still trying to reconcile with the first and second Great Awakenings in our history. The first Great Awakening happened in 1720 to 1750, and George Whitefield and Jonathan Edwards were the primary speakers then. They was completely different personalities, but they spoke an evangelical word. And the second Great Awakening was 1780 to 1805. Now you recognize this a little bit. Charles Finney was the significant voice there. But what you recognize is in 1825, Dewey was born. Unitarians was born. But in 24, what happened was that the Baptists, which was very evangelical, split north and south, and so they split because of the slavery, issues of slavery. Now there's more to that when we take a shape. It was the traditional Christian communities, and in particular the evangelicals, that does shape and did shape the American religious culture for the most part. I mean, it was divided like 90 and 10%. The humanistic groups, however, were locked into satisfying the cerebral appetite for anything with 2 or more coherent sentences together. Less emotion for them, and intellectually more compelling word for them. Less charm, less theatrics, but more beef. Guess which one packs them in at Aunt Mabel's church? Well, I guarantee you it's not Unitarianism. Unitarianism, as secular or religious or nature, each flavor has a definite appeal to me and a historical affinity to forebears of uncommon grit. Because I believe that psychologically our present senses, SEN, SES, are limited to what we are now and will be as an evolving species, it seems to me that creativity continues to give clues to life having more to experience. There is more of our story than we presently know about. I believe that. I remain a curious agnostic, but a very, very religious humanist. Blessed be, and amen.
Thank you, Dale, for the history of humanism and Unitarianism, Part 2. Our closing hymn is number 121, We'll Build a Land. Our closing words are from humanist John Dewey. What humanism means to me is an expansion, not a contraction, of human life, an expansion in which nature and the science of nature are made the willing servants of human good. Our chalice extinguishing words are from Elizabeth Sell Jones. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. When we are together in person, we circle our round sanctuary and join hands for our closing circle and covenant. For now, we will hold hands in spirit with those on Zoom and recite our covenant together. Love is the spirit of this fellowship, and community is its goal. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. So may it be. Is recording stopped?